The contact appears on your screen at 0312, and it is not behaving correctly. It's a small surface contact, radar cross-section consistent with a fast attack craft, and it's running without AIS. The automatic identification transponder that every legitimate vessel in this waterway is required by international maritime law to operate. It's 4.2 miles off your port bow, and it's accelerating. Not toward the shipping lane, toward you. Your CO is on the bridge. You have called out the contact. You have issued the standard radio challenge on channel 16 in English and in Farsi. No response. The contact is now at 3.8 miles and still accelerating, closing at approximately 40 knots. And the math that you do automatically, the math that your training burned into you over 800 hours of simulation and 3 actual deployments, tells you that at this speed you have roughly 90 seconds before it enters the minimum safe distance threshold. 90 seconds. That's how long you have to be right. Because wrong in one direction means a sailor on your ship dies. Wrong in the other direction means you just fired the first shot of a war that shuts down 20% of the world's oil supply and pulls every major power on Earth into a conflict nobody is ready for. 90 seconds. The contact is at 3.4 miles. This is FND Dude POV, and this is what it actually feels like from inside the decision. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest navigable point, and it is the most consequential 21 miles of water on the surface of the planet. Every single day, between 17 and 21 million barrels of crude oil pass through it, roughly 1/5 of global consumption. Loaded onto supertankers the length of 4 football fields that move at walking pace through designated traffic lanes while, on both sides, military forces that have been in a state of managed hostility for 45 years watch each other with the specific attention of people who know exactly how quickly managed hostility can become something else. Iran has threatened to close the strait at least a dozen times since 1979. The United States has committed, explicitly and repeatedly, to keeping it open. You are the commitment. You are USS Gravely, DDG-107, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, 509 feet of American foreign policy, traveling at 18 knots through water that both sides treat as a trigger. Most nights nothing happens. Most nights is not tonight. You came to this moment through a specific sequence of choices that started in Youngstown, Ohio at 18 years old, when the choice in front of you was the Navy or a warehouse job that your uncle said would turn into a career if you were patient enough. And you looked at the warehouse and you looked at the recruiter and you chose the thing that seemed like it would take you somewhere that wasn't Youngstown. That's the honest version. The version you tell at family dinners is about service and duty, which is also true, but it's the second reason, not the first. The first reason was you needed to get out, and this was the door that opened. The Navy took that reason and every other reason you had and processed them all into the same output. A petty officer first-class operations specialist with 11 years of service, 3 deployments to 5th Fleet, and the institutional knowledge of the Persian Gulf that you can only accumulate by being in it repeatedly over time, learning its moods and patterns the way a farmer learns weather, understanding what normal looks like so that you can identify the precise moment when something stops being normal. What is happening right now is not normal. The contact is at 2.9 miles, and your CO has authorized the RHIB, the rigid hull inflatable boat, to be readied for deployment, which is the escalation step below weapons-free, and the bridge is running the challenge sequence again, English and Farsi, and there is still no response, and you are tracking 2 additional contacts that appeared 6 minutes ago on the eastern edge of your radar picture, small and fast and also dark, also no AIS, and the tactical picture is assembling itself into a shape you recognize from the 2020 incident, April 15th, when 11 IRGCN speedboats harassed USS Paul Hamilton in exactly this formation, closing from multiple vectors simultaneously, forcing the ship to track threats in 3 directions at once. The memory is not comforting, it is information. You feed it into the assessment and you call out the 2 new contacts and you watch your CO's face process the update and you see the decision forming before he speaks it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy is not the regular Iranian Navy. This distinction matters operationally and is rarely made in the coverage that reaches the American public. The regular Iranian Navy, the Artesh, is a conventional force operating conventional vessels under conventional military command. The IRGCN is a separate parallel force reporting directly to the Supreme Leader, operating a doctrine of asymmetric harassment in the shallow Gulf waters using swarms of fast attack craft, submarines too small for standard sonar to track reliably, and anti-ship missiles positioned on islands and coastal installations throughout the strait. Their strategic logic is explicit and has been articulated in their own military publications. They cannot defeat the U.S. Navy in a conventional engagement. so they don't try. What they do is create conditions where the US Navy might defeat itself by overreacting to a provocation and firing first, generating the international incident that justifies Iranian escalation, or by underreacting and allowing an actual attack to succeed and demonstrating that the American commitment to keeping the strait open is a bluff. The IRGCN has been running this game for 20 years. They're very good at it. Your job is to be better at reading it than they are at running it. The primary contact is now at 2.1 miles and it has not deviated, not 1 degree. In every harassment scenario you've studied and most you've experienced, the craft turns at some point, demonstrating that the approach was a provocation rather than an attack, giving both sides the off-ramp. This one has not turned. Your CO calls weapons free on the close-in weapon system. The Phalanx, a 20mm rotary cannon that fires 4,500 rounds per minute and is designed to defeat incoming missiles but will absolutely stop a fast attack craft at close range, and designates the primary contact as the primary threat and tells you to keep tracking the 2 eastern contacts, and you say yes sir, and your hands are steady and your voice is steady, and somewhere underneath the training and the professionalism, a part of you is running a calculation that has nothing to do with tactics, which is that your mother is going to find out about this one way or another, and you hope she finds out in the version where it resolved correctly. The primary contact turns at 1.4 miles, hard to starboard, maximum acceleration. It screams away from your hull on a heading that takes it back toward Iranian territorial waters at 45 knots, and within 4 minutes it is beyond radar range of your close-in systems, and the 2 eastern contacts, which had been closing, also turn, also accelerate away, and the tactical picture goes from 3 active threats to 0 in the time it takes you to exhale. The bridge is quiet for approximately 6 seconds in a way that has a specific texture, the silence of people who have just been in something and are now processing the fact that they are still in the thing they were in before the something happened, which is a ship in the Strait of Hormuz at 03:17 with a lot of paperwork ahead of them and a watch that still has 4 hours on it. Your CO says, "Good work, everyone." That's all. You write up the contact report. You log the times, the bearings, the speeds, the challenge sequences and non-responses, the exact moment of the turn, and the heading on departure. This report will go to 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain, to Naval Forces Central Command, eventually to some level of the Pentagon where people who were not in this CIC tonight will read it and add it to a database of IRGCN interactions that currently contains over 300 documented incidents since 2015. It will be classified. It will not be in any newspaper. The world will not know that tonight, at 03:12, there were 90 seconds in the Strait of Hormuz where the outcome was genuinely uncertain. The world will wake up in the morning and the oil price will be what it was yesterday, and nobody will know that it almost wasn't. This is most of what the job is. Incidents that don't become events. Decisions that resolve correctly and therefore disappear into classified databases rather than history books. The ones that don't resolve correctly are the ones you know about. The USS Stark in 1987, hit by 2 Iraqi Exocet missiles, 37 sailors killed. The USS Samuel B. Roberts in 1988, nearly sunk by an Iranian mine, 10 sailors wounded. The USS Vincennes in 1988, which shot down Iran Air Flight 655, a civilian Airbus A300, killing all 290 people aboard, because the crew misidentified it as an attacking F-14 in a combat situation that had been running for over an hour, and in which the data was ambiguous, and the decision had to be made in the same kind of compressed time frame that you just experienced at 03:12. The Vincennes crew were later awarded combat action ribbons. The captain received the Legion of Merit. 290 civilians were dead. Both of those things are true simultaneously and neither one cancels the other. And that is the moral landscape of the work you do, which you do not spend much time examining directly because examining it doesn't change the next contact that appears on your screen without an AIS transponder. By your 4th deployment, the escalation has shifted in ways that your first deployment didn't prepare you for. Iran seized the Marshall Islands flagged tanker Advantage Suite in April 2023. 200 miles outside the strait, using a helicopter insertion of IRGCN commandos onto the deck while the crew watched and couldn't stop it. You were not on that operation, but you were in theater, 140 miles away, when the seizure happened, and USS McFall responded and arrived on scene to find the tanker already under Iranian control and moving toward Iranian waters and the rules of engagement in that situation. The calculation of what retaking the vessel by force would cost against what allowing the seizure would signal being made at levels far above your pay grade while you sat in a CIC running a support track and waiting to be told what the outcome was. The outcome was the tanker went to Iran. It was held for months. The crew was eventually released. The signal was read by every shipping company operating in the Gulf, and marine insurance rates for vessels transiting within 50 miles of Iranian waters went up 400% within 6 weeks. which is the market's version of a threat assessment. And the market's assessment was that the threat was real and had just been demonstrated. The tanker seizure changes something in the operational environment that is difficult to quantify, but that you feel in the character of the contacts that follow. The IRGCN harassment doesn't stop. It intensifies. The interactions in the 6 months after the Advantage Suite are faster, closer, more frequent. The off-ramps come later in each approach. The margin between provocation and attack, which was never comfortable, gets smaller. You track 4 incidents in a 9-week period that your own private assessment would classify as closer than the official reporting describes. You don't say this out loud because your private assessment is not the official assessment, and the official assessment is what goes in the report, and what goes in the report is what shapes the policy response. And you are not a policymaker. You are a petty officer first class with a radar screen and a contact that needs to be classified before it gets too close. The decision that nobody talks about openly, the one that lives underneath every interaction in this waterway, is the threshold question. How close is too close? Not in meters. The formal minimum safe distance is defined in the rules of engagement, and you know it precisely. The deeper question, how many incidents like tonight before someone makes the wrong call? Not because they're incompetent, because 90 seconds is 90 seconds, and human beings operating at the edge of their training under genuine threat with incomplete information in a physical environment that degrades cognition, the heat, the sleep deprivation, the sustained stress of operating in contested water for 7 months, are not machines, and machines themselves make errors. And the history of this strait is a history of errors that were made by competent people doing the best they could with the information they had in the time they had to process it. And some of those errors killed people, and some of them almost started wars. And the only reason the almost war stayed almost is that the other side also made a calculation and also decided at the last moment that the cost of the actual war was higher than the cost of backing down. You don't know what happens when both sides stop making that calculation at the same moment. Nobody does. That's not pessimism. That's the operational reality of two forces in a space this small with this much at stake and this many years of managed hostility between them and no formal communication channel that functions reliably enough to stop a miscalculation from becoming a catastrophe before the catastrophe is already in motion. You understand this. The men and women in the CIC with you understand this. The commanding officers understand this. The admirals at Fifth Fleet understand this. And understanding it doesn't prevent it. It just means that when it happens, the people who were there will be able to reconstruct exactly how it went wrong, which is a different thing from having prevented it. Your daughter is 4 years old. She doesn't know what you do. She knows you go on a big boat. She drew you a picture of the big boat and gave it to your wife before your last deployment, and your wife photographed it and sent it to you, and you have it as the lock screen on your personal phone, which you are not allowed to have in the CIC and which lives in your rack when you're on watch. The big boat in the drawing has a sun above it and waves below it and a stick figure on the deck that is you, and the waves are blue and the sun is yellow, and the strait in the drawing has none of the qualities of the actual strait, none of the 0312 darkness and the closing contact and the 90 seconds and the exhale that comes when the contact turns. In the drawing it is just water, friendly, simple, the thing that takes you away and the thing that will eventually bring you back. She'll be 5 when you get home. You'll have missed the birthday by 3 weeks. You'll bring her something from Bahrain, a toy or a scarf with bright colors, and she'll be happy to see you in the way that 4- and 5-year-olds are happy, completely and without reservation, and you'll hold that for as long as it lasts. Tonight another contact is going to appear on someone's screen in this waterway. Small, fast, dark, no AIS. The challenge will go out in English and in Farsi. The clock will start. Somewhere a sailor who has been awake for 17 hours and who has a daughter or a son or a mother or a reason they enlisted that had nothing to do with service and everything to do with needing a door that opened. That sailor is going to have 90 seconds to be right. They'll probably be right. Probably. That's how it works.